I do want to move right along today. We got a bunch to do. Mostly it will be covering printing from AutoCAD, both to a laser printer and to the plotter. A couple things to start with. It used to be that everybody just like carry their computer over and plug it into the plotter and print from there directly from AutoCAD. And that just resulted in a lot of, oh, I meant to do it bigger. Oh, I meant to do it black and white, not in color. And we end up wasting lots of paper and lots of ink. And by the time you start doing big sheets, the ink really starts to add up. So we've decided that the cleanest way to do this is pretty much whenever you're printing for this class or a studio, print to a PDF file on your computer, which does a couple things. It gives you a complete preview of how that's going to print. So you know if you got the scale right, you know if you got the line weights right, you know if you got the color right. And then if everything is right, then you end up printing or plotting it. I'm using printing to talk about the laser printer and plotting to talk about the plotter, but it's really an identical operation. It's just a bigger printer. And the other reason is so that as you, let's say, do 5 or 6 prints over the course of a week or two of your project, saving the PDF each time, stick it in a folder called printouts or something or other for Art 569, and you'll have a record all the way through the semester of what you've done at each stage. And that's useful to look back to see where you came from and where you've gotten to. So we can print directly to the laser printer over UL Secure or over whatever your Wi-Fi connection is. And as I mentioned before, using that same IP address, from home, you can print to this printer, and you think you're printing to your one at home and nothing happens. You hit print again, and then 2 prints come off of here and nothing comes off at home. So I would suggest not making this printer your default printer, just in whatever your applications are. The plotter, we use that seldom enough that just copying the PDF from your computer to a thumb drive and taking it over there seems like the cleanest way to do that, as opposed to installing the plotter software on your computer. It really does make a difference when you're plotting stuff and understanding it to have your walls be thicker than your casework and your casework thicker than your windows, something like that. So we're going to be creating what's called an STB file, a plot style file for you. You do it once now and you can use it for the rest of your life and never have to make another one. So we're going to go through that exercise. The procedures are slightly different on the Mac and the PC for creating this plot style table. What it essentially does is it links the idea of a thin line to a certain printed width, a thick line to a fatter printed width. And the way we do it is, I don't know where it is up here, and it's in a different place on the Mac anyhow. So it's Styles Manager, one word. At this point on Windows, we have this Add a Plot Style wizard, which sort of talks us through things that's not there on the Macintosh. So on the Mac, open the AutoCAD STB file, and then you can do a save as. Windows doesn't have a save as option. Each of you give this file that we're going to save just your name, in my case, gillis.stb. So what this looks like, let's use this Add a Plot Style Table wizard. And Mac people, I did this last night, so we can sort of talk through there. Name a plot style table next. And one thing to notice through all this is we are working exclusively with the STB style tables, mapping a style to a pen width, not a color to a pen width. Color to a pen width will drive you insane because people color things differently and then you have no idea what they intended. So only STBs. And in fact, if you on your computer, you want to erase all the CTB files, that's fine. I do that on mine, so I don't make a mistake. So next, I want to start from scratch. And we will be creating a named plot style table, not a color dependent one. Named plot style. And I'm just going to call this Gillis.stb, and you call it yours. And then you can carry it with you from computer to computer, and all your files will plot the same way for the rest of your life, if you can find it again. So what we're going to do is go into the place where we actually create this connection between a word like thin and the actual thickness on the screen. We're going to be creating some more styles here. The normal style, which you can't change, it's just built in, means print any layers that have the plot style normal attached to them in the color that they appear on screen. We're not remapping them to thin black or fat yellow or something. Just if it's magenta on your screen, it's magenta coming off the plotter. If it's yellow on the screen and you print it to the laser printer, it'll be some very, very light gray that's like as close as a laser printer can get to that. In the Mac, you already start out with style 1, I think. There's one there already. You just right-click, rename it, and call it thin. Or call it fine. We'll work up from skinniest to fattest. And for Windows users, we'll just hit Add Style. And we're only going to change three things for any of these. We're going to change the name, in this case to fine. We're going to change its color to black. And we're going to change its line weight. You might have noticed that you can assign line weights to objects in properties. We just don't want to do that. We're going to control it all by layer. So line weight, these are in fractions of thousandths of a millimeter. And the first one we're going to do is a little strange. We're going to give it fine being 0 line weight. And that means the thinnest line that particular device can draw, printing onto white paper. And the usual use for that fine line type is if you got a wall like this and a dimension like 6'3". Fine is used for these lines to make it as thin as possible, so there's no confusing them with real stuff. That's about the only use I use them for. Maybe for pointers on text or something like that. Super skinny, so we don't confuse it with the real things that we're drawing. So fine, black, and 0 millimeters. The line weight here is 0 millimeters. The Mac version has a fewer options, as I recall, on that screen. I'm not sure, but the net result is the same. Then let's add another style. Mac users just right-click in that window and click Add Style. We'll make this one thin. We also want them to plot black. On the plotter, we're not talking about color. And then object line weight. Let's make that 0.1 millimeter. 0.100. Once you end up plotting a sheet or two, you can realize, I don't like my walls as thick as Bill like them. Then you can come and edit this file and they'll shrink down or get heavier, whatever you choose. In an office, there'd be some very rigorously enforced office standard, just one template, one plotting file. But here it's an art school. So fine, thin, add style, medium, black. And for this, it turns out that in terms of how we perceive things, we notice differences in line weights and similar things when the difference is about the square root of 2, like 1.5. So I'm going to make this one be 15. We'll beef it up. We'll make this 2.5. Make this 25. 25 for medium, 0.25. Last one, add style. I'll call this heavy. Some people like to have those all like 4 letters, so fine, thin, medium, and HEVY, and that just seems like too much like texting to me, so I like to spell the words out so I know what's going on. I'm old. And we'll make that black, and we'll make that 0.5 millimeters. And a millimeter is basically a 25th of an inch, so this means a 50th of an inch, which is still not like it's not like a really wide line. Okay, that's good for starters. If you look at some of the other CTB files, there'll be one that has a whole bunch of mappings onto ways to do gray lines, which is with screening, which is sort of a halftone screen that gets laid on there. But I rarely find the need for that in my work. Save and close. Finish. And get out of here. Whenever we go to print, we tell it which plot style table to use. That's remembered with the drawing. So once you've set it up once, you'll be there forever. So we've made the association between plot style names like medium to a pen weight. Now we want to tell each layer which one of those to use. And this is when it gets really pretty useful. So we want to scroll over. And if you need to turn the layer manager on, that's just a layer, I guess. We'll turn that on for you. And what we're not doing is using this line weight in this column at all. We're going to let how things plot on paper be entirely determined by how that plot style is set up. Within reasonable boundaries, construction documents are not the places for artistic expression. It's where we're trying to convey as much information as we can, as straightforwardly for us and as straightforwardly for the people on the other end of the drawings to get that. So what we want to do here, and your drawing may vary, these are all set to normal, which means if I plotted it or printed, if I plotted it right now, I'd get green lines and red lines and blue lines and stuff, which I don't want. I want to narrow that down to the lines that we've set up. Most of them will be medium, so I can change them all to medium at once. But I can click on layer 0, and I should be able to just do a shift click to select them all. Does that work on the Mac like that? I selected this one and then came down here and did a shift click, however, or control A, whatever, however Mac selects things. And then I'm just going to change them all to, I can click on any one of them. Oh, here I need to tell it which plot style table do I want to use for this drawing. And right down here, it says the active one needs to be the one that I just made, which has those in it. You can just click on any one of the plot styles, and then the list will come up for the ones that are defined in my STB file. Actually, I'm going to select all of them and change them all to medium to start with, and then just change the few that need to be thinner or thicker than that. Changing the medium. My light detail layer. Well, I need to escape out of that, so I'm just dealing with one layer at a time. Sorry, one layer at a time. The light one I'll do for thin, fine. We'll make light, fine, medium can stay medium. I'll make my wall patterns be thin, maybe. Actually, my light, I should say, I'm going to make this one, my light line, actually be thin. We can play with these as we go back and forth. Appliances, casework, wall construction, I'm not sure what that's going to be. The point is to realize some lines I want to be super fine, some lines I want to be thicker, and we'll just see where they go from there. And then it's a matter of preference from there on. As long as you can tell the difference between a door and a window and a wall and a piece of casework, yeah. The dimensions, I'm going to set that to my fine. I want that to be the skinniest lines. And I'll basically just do the walls might be wide, or heavy, whatever that is. So if you're confused here, certainly make your walls be the heaviest one and your dimensions be the thinnest one, and we'll see where we get. Everything else is sort of somewhere in the middle. And one of the reasons for doing this, it's a little tedious, I know, and it's easier in Revit, is that it costs a chunk to print color. I mean, you think, well, I'm designing in color, why don't we just print it in color? Even at a busy reproduction house, they'll charge you $1 a sheet in quantity for black and white prints and $5 a sheet for anything with color on it. So if you're doing 20 copies of a 20-page set, that's hundreds and hundreds of dollars you don't need to spend. So with that done, we can plot or print from several different locations in AutoCAD, and a quick one just to get things kicked over to the laser printer would be just to plot here from model space, not to worry about a title block, maybe not even to worry about scale, but just to be able to print from right here, see what you got, mark it up, come back to it. Mac users, listen up. For the Mac users to be able to see the plot style in the layer dialog, with the layer manager up, plot style isn't one of your options right now by default. Down here is how we control which fields for the layers are visible. Click on there, down to view options, and then check plot style. And then those show up for that layer. And that's something we've now made that plot style table. You will never have to make that again. We've added it to this drawing. We never have to add it to this drawing again. So now we can actually plot that we have those correlations made. At this point, we should be done with assigning the plot styles to the layers. Now let's print something. Again, as I said, we can print from paper space with the title sheets or right from here. Let's start from here, it's easier. And there are any number of ways to start the print command. They all end up exactly the same place. You can, if you have a print icon, you can hit that. If you have file print, you can hit that. You can just type the word print, you can type the word plot, or you can do Control P or Command P. They all work the same. I'll use this one just because it's easy to see what's going on. Print. And I never want to see this thing again. In a big office where you have 10 sheets you want to print at the same time, you can say, okay, print one after another, after another, after another. We're not in that position. We're doing one at a time. Continue. So don't bother showing me that again. Continue to plot a single sheet. And the plot dialog comes up, which is, it's pretty similar on the Mac. It's sort of shrunk down, but there's nothing that conflicts here. And the first thing to notice is, now that we made that STB file, let's make sure that that is the one that's currently going to be used. And does that show up on the Mac as well? You might have to pick one and say import, and then it finds the one you just made and brings it into the list. And usually the first question comes up, do we want to assign this plot style table to this layout and all the other layouts we might make for this file? And I'm going to say yes right now. A reason where you might not want to do it is if, oh, let's say you wanted to print everything in color for some in-house review or something, then you'd have a different setup. But for right now, that's not what we're dealing with. We're trying to be consistent from one sheet to the next. So yes, let's do it for all of them. For right now, we're just going to print to the laser printer. Well, we're going to print to a PDF file just to get in that habit, and then actually send the PDF over here once we made sure that it's correct. On the Mac, under the printer, pick one of the AutoCAD PDF formats. The high quality is fine. Starting on page 3, I started to work through the different ones that we need to do. We need to tell it the plot style table. We need to tell it which printer we're using, and in this case, we're sort of treating Adobe PDF as if it were a printer. And then we need to tell it well, page size, and we'll just leave it as letter for now, because that's what we have in the laser printer. And then what to plot. And this is crucial, obviously, because it's a big world out there. Display means just what's on the screen right now. Whatever, right, so it'll print from right here to right there. Rarely do I use display except for just, a non-scaled check plot just to see what it looks like that I can scribble on. Extents is a rectangle that includes everything in the drawing, even if it's way off the screen. Mac users their screen's a little different, and they actually get sort of a preview of what's going to fit on the screen. It's very nice. I wish we had it here, but in what to plot, I want to go limits. Some of you have an address, but ignore limits. I never use them. What we really want to do is window. We just want to draw a rectangle around what we want to plot. And I'm just going to click out here and click out here. Maybe giving myself a little space around the edges. This gives a little preview of the printable area. It turns the paper sideways, but that rectangle corresponds to the rectangle I drew here. If I want to put that in the middle of the page, I can center the plot. That's an option with the Mac as well. A couple things. We've made some changes here. We don't want to have to go back and do this again the next time, right? So hit apply to layout. And it remembers these for this layout or for model space. And if you want that always to happen, every time you make a change here for it to be remembered, click Save Changes to Layout. The next thing is to preview or view PDF. What's on the Mac? What's that option? So what we have here is in the Windows version is this option to see how those line weights are mapping out. Two things. I can preview it. I like it, and I can save it here to disk on the Windows version, or I've previewed, I made the changes I need to make. I can say okay. Okay, I need to log into Acrobat. Not been activated. I know what the problem is. My university license is only good on 2 computers at one time. And right now I'm signed in on my main computer at home and the Mac that I took home. I just got to log in again, that's all. I got to turn off one of the computers that has it. on company or school. If this ever happens to you, right now I've got Adobe is authorized on my main computer at home and also the Mac that I took home. So I need to sign out there. And now I can sign in here, continue. Welcome back to Acrobat BC, Bill. Okay, let's see if that works. Try it again. Well, good thing I saved that layout, huh? Okay. Now, here's where I would be really specific about storing these different versions of my plans here in a folder made for that. So I can just like sequentially number them 001, 002, 003 as I go through my design process. So they're not just all on my desktop. Zoom documents. Oh, I'm in documents. Let's make a new folder. Art 559 PDFs. 559, whatever. And I'll say, okay, save. Okay, in Windows and in AutoCAD, when you save, you print from AutoCAD to a PDF, it'll open automatically in Acrobat, and I can just print from right there. Well, whatever the app is that you're using to print from, so from Acrobat or whatever this is, I'll just go to print. And I saw a change that one. Print on one side, more settings. Print. Anyway, so even from here, you can tell the difference between the walls and the thinner ones. Just getting as much of that as you can.
At this point, a student couldn't figure out why her walls weren't printing in the PDF.
There's an evil spirit in your hard drive.
After some poking around, it turned out that layer had been set to no plot in the plot column of the layer properties manager. Fun, huh?
The only one that always has it is def points. It's just always no plot. You can't change it. Let me share what we were doing here. One of the options for a layer is it's here. You'll notice that on my plot, I got no dimensions, but I do have them on the screen. And that's because in the layer properties manager, the dims layer is set for some reason not to plot. By and large, I don't want that to happen. I want to be able to see dimensions so I can check them or whatever. And that's what it happened somehow to Katie.
That those layers have been set to no plot.
So one more thing to look at. And while we're waiting, your lab fee is paying for the paper and the ink. So I want you to think of these as the printers and the scanners and everything is just stuff you use. I'm going to order a couple of toner cartridges, and there's more paper upstairs. Here's one thing I don't want to happen is a couple of years ago, people got in a jam for printing their 11x17 portfolios and ended up printing them on the big plotter we had. And they print like 11x17 on a 24x36 sheet, trim them on the paper cutter and put them in the binder. Please don't do that. We have in Nathan's office an 11x17 color laser printer. Mwah! He's a little reluctant just to like put it out here. It might require an appointment or somebody with a key to, but we'll do that. That's the deal. You're paying for it. Please use it. Please don't abuse it. Recovery manager. For elevation. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have Katie's attention, I don't know how this works on the Mac, but AutoCAD and or Windows, I'm not sure which, realized it just stopped in the middle of this drawing. But when I came up, restart AutoCAD, it says you know, we've saved most recent progress through this thing called the Drawing Recovery Manager, which just appeared on my screen. And I think backup files, apartment thing, you know, so, you know, normally these are saved, it's just saved with the DWG file extension. That's just the drawing. The most recent previous version is saved, oh, there we go, with the .bak for backup. And then this SV $ is the one that saves since the last time I actually saved anything. So I'm going to pick that, get out of here, see what happens when I pick that. Double click. There we go. Drawing Recovery Manager, so we can dismiss that somehow. Preview. Get rid of that. Okay, so it looks like I'm back. It would be interesting to see what happens. At home, you can just plug into your printer and just, instead of printing to a PDF, just go ahead and print to your printer. You know, obviously it's your paper and your time, but you see the number of sort of iterations we have to go through to get stuff right, and there's no point spending money on paper and ink, especially the communal paper and ink, to do that. On my A101 sheet, we could print this reduced, you know, print to fit on 8.5 by 11, but let's print it on the big guy. The way I make the title sheets, let's go into BE, block edit. Let me just show you how this is working. Here I'm in the block editor for putting together this title sheet, and I have around the edge a 24 by 36 inch rectangle, and I think that's on the def points layer, just so it never plots. I never have to worry about it. But those are these corner points end up being selectable points that I can, when I'm windowing it, telling AutoCAD how much to plot, I have those points to snap to. Those are exactly 24 by 36. It's going exactly onto a sheet of paper that's 24 by 36. So I never have to worry about what I'm picking or how big it's going to be. So I'm going to leave that. Okay, at this point, when I go into print, same thing, Control P, Command P. Oh, it forgot that part, didn't it? Let's work it from the top down. What this is about is once I have all this stuff set here, I can save that with a name like monochrome printing 24 by 36, and all these settings will just be remembered. But there are enough variations here, I don't do that. So I'm still on my Gillis STB file. I'm still printing to Adobe PDF. I'm printing to a 24 by 36 inch sheet, which is the architectural D size. There's an engineering D size that's 22 by 34. Don't use that. That's so those will reduce down to 11 by 17, but Arch D. I'm going to set up this window. You see this white area here? This is what AutoCAD is ready to plot right now. I don't really have to respecify that, but the first time you come into a drawing, you'll need to specify it. So window. I've got my O snaps turned on, so I'm picking that def points corner, this def points corner. Now the only real difference between what we did in model space and what we did here is at model space you get to pick the scale you want, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, whatever. Here we're always plotting at 1:1 because we have a 24 by 36 inch title block and it's going onto a 24 by 36 inch sheet of paper. So that should be okay. Let's just preview this. Okay, so my line work is all in black. My color is in color. That looks good to me. So I'll hit print. And this will save it out to an Adobe PDF, which I'll stick on my thumb drive here. This new thumb drive. And it will do two things. It will save it and also preview it how it actually appears as a PDF in case there's any discrepancy between AutoCAD's preview and how Adobe thinks about it. There we go. Or whatever this is here. Okay, Control O. Okay. So that's just what I want. These get crank portrait like this because that's actually how they're sort of coming out of the plotter. So don't worry about that. It'll be fine. So that was an edge. So that looks good as previewed. And as saved to this flash drive. Oh, I'm done with AutoCAD for right now. So let's save as. I'll reset this. I'll save this as that original apartment plan drawing. Save. Yes. Don't go to sleep on me, guys. It's just about to get fun. Let's all come over here and look at this plotter first of all. I want this to be your friend. The only difference between this and a printer that takes sheets is the paper comes in a roll. It just lifts out like that. There's nothing to it. Goes back in here. When eventually runs out of paper, which it will, there's 150 feet, which is good for 50 prints, and then we put on a new roll. The way this works is you remember which direction the paper is going. The blue one comes off, that comes out. You get a new roll. It's pretty robust. That's all you do. And then drop it back in the same way it came. It feeds itself automatically, but it does need a good, clean, straight edge to do that. And the best way I found to do that, if it's torn up or crumpled or something, is you got this slot right here. And if you have a sharp knife or X-Acto blade, which I happen to have, you can just cut that like that. I wouldn't do with scissors because it won't be straight. And from there, there's sort of a slot here with little gripper wheels. And this feeds gently down into there and it grabs it. And a couple things we have to tell it. What kind of paper do you have? We're just always using plain paper, which is over here. Extra rolls. I think that's glossy. We'll save that for final color presentations. So plain paper, continue. Loading. And what it's mostly doing right now is setting itself up to come in perfectly straight all the way through. If it's a little bit kinked, then it's going to come out this way. So what it's doing is it like measures the edge and then it is like adjusts this corner back like microscopically to straighten the whole thing out. It's called de-skewing, correcting paper skew. It'll cut the paper off as well. It's got a little blade. And something we found yesterday was when we had the plotter up here and the sheets came out
onto the tabletop,
they sort of got stuck with static electricity and the paper sort of bowed up in there. And then when the cutter came across, it all sort of jammed up and tore the paper. It's terrible. So we're just gonna let these fall and we'll get some nice trough to catch them in. Okay, so here's my PDF. So file print, right? This is a Hewlett-Packard T250. We should put that on the side here somewhere, but that's what this is. Pretty much deal with everything on the top line before you deal with stuff down below. Go to properties, we need to set the page size, which is architectural D, okay. So we see my PDF is 24 by 36 and my paper is 24 by 36. I have these color images here. I'd like to print them in color. So I'm not checking print in grayscale. And I have custom scale set to 100%, which is what we need. And I think we'll just hit print and see what's happening. Now it says printing. Sometimes there's another question to answer over here.
That's on the front panel.
Like, are you sure that's the paper you want to use? And you say yes, and it runs. And we're counting on the weight of the paper to hold that paper down. And what's going to, one thing to watch is it's going to print to the edge, extrude it, pull it back, and do the cut. So don't let it do all that. Here we have this. The color looks really good, even on just plain paper, not glossy. You can see the line weights here picking up. This is what you really need to see. I should have put this frame on the def points layer so it didn't plot. It's just confusing, especially if it gets close to an edge. You think it's like an extra thickness or something, right? So you hardly ever do that. So that's it. Don't go crazy, but help yourselves. And in terms of printing stuff, I would love to see things just printed and pinned up. Make this feel like an actual design studio.